Welcome back, Craig here, and I want to talk today about what you do when you're scared to negotiate, when you think that they're not going to give me this for the price that I want, I'm not going to get the house for the price that I want, I'm not going to get the job for the salary that I want. And how do you deal with that situation? There's a common term thrown around called Batna, and I'll explain what that is, and I'm going to talk about how it is misused and what you can do in these situations when you're a little bit scared to negotiate. Let's talk about this weird term called BATNA. It's called BATNA because it stands for Best Alternative to Negotiated Agreement. It's a silly term, but what it really means is, what are you going to do if this negotiation doesn't work out? And the Batna Model, which was popularized in this book called Getting to Yes, this is the most popular book on negotiation ever. It was actually written in 1981, and it focuses on this term because it says that you should focus on what are you going to do if it doesn't work out, which means that you have the power to walk away. You're like, hey, I don't actually need this deal, I don't actually need this situation, I don't need this job. But truthfully, how many negotiations are you in where you don't care about the result? Usually we care greatly about the result. We really want that car, we want that house, we want that job. And so sometimes, one, it's very hard to apply in certain situations, and then two, it gets misused. And even the authors themselves have come up with other books now that go beyond this model. So let's talk about some of the holes in the Batna model. You don't really care about that term, but let's just talk about the theory of it, and then how to apply this thing in your real life in the proper way. Thinking about alternatives sounds like a really good thing to do, but there are some pitfalls. For example, looking at alternatives in certain situations doesn't even apply. If you were trying to resolve a conflict with your spouse, for example, or with a friend, what's the alternative? To get a divorce or to break up the friendship? There are situations where the BATNA concept is just really hard to do. Or let's say that you have a job and you have two offers. In certain situations, you don't actually know what the second offer is going to be, so it's not clear what your alternative is. And now you're trying to negotiate with one party, and with the other party, it's a complete black box. So how do you quantify that? How do you make that into a best alternative if you don't know what it is? This is one of those things that when you hear about it, it sounds like a good idea because you're looking at alternatives, but in practice, it ends up being kind of negative. It's hard to apply, and then sometimes when it's hard to apply, it kind of makes us think like, well, maybe I shouldn't negotiate at all because I don't like any of my alternatives. There's also this implicit power dynamic that I really don't like, which is you're kind of thinking about, well, what is my ability to walk away? And in that, there's kind of like an implicit threat that, hey, if I don't get what I want in this deal, I'm gonna just jet. And that is kind of a negative framework to go into the negotiation with. It is a fear-based tactic. And instead, it's much better to paint a picture for the other side about the rosy, amazing picture that'll happen if they actually do make a deal with you, and to focus on that rather than the idea that, hey, I can jet at any point. Now, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't explore other opportunities. If you have, say, a job search, it's great to go to another company and get another offer, maybe even from a competing company. But the question is, how do you use this information? If your only play is to say, hey, I'm just gonna go to the highest bidder, well, it can be really an aggressive play. It can make people feel like it's just really transactional, like there's not a relationship there, and it can corrode that. And it's really hard to get people to fight for you, to break their rules on, say, the compensation and actually offer you more money when they feel like it's very transactional and you're just going to the highest bidder and your only play is to pull on their emotions and just walk. There's also a mental side to this, which is if you're constantly focused on what's going to happen if this fails, it can really heighten your fight and flight response. And so it heightens your own emotions and it makes it difficult to actually deal with the situation that you have at hand. So if you're not focused on the alternatives for your side, the better question is to ask, what are the alternatives for the other side? You can flip this Batna model on its head and start focusing on the other side. Focus on if it's a job situation, let's say, they're offering you a job, and what is their alternative if they don't hire you? And sometimes we're so focused on not losing that deal, that job for ourselves, we don't stop to think about, what is their side? What will they lose if they don't get this? If you talk to any recruiter or hiring manager, they will tell you that it's actually a really big pain to start the whole process all over again. They've chosen what they think is the best candidate, it's you, and if they have to start that process again, they waste time and they waste money. So it's actually a huge cost to switch, and sometimes we don't think about that in these situations. There's a really famous example that I love that illustrates this point, and it comes from the early 1900s when President Roosevelt was running against then President William Howard Taft in the presidential election. And they had printed out 3 million copies of this photograph, but had forgotten to actually get the copyright on it. And the copyright law said that they could be exposed to as much as $1 in damages per occurrence. So it's $3 million, which in today's numbers is something like $60 million. And so it was a huge blunder. And so the campaign manager, wrote to the photographer and said, hey, we have a tremendous publicity opportunity. We're gonna print 3 million photographs. How much are you willing to pay to have one of your photographs be part of this campaign? Please respond. And the photographer responded, like, hey, sounds like a great opportunity, but I can only afford a couple $100s. So you can see he completely turned around this and reframed this argument because he focused not only on, hey, what are we gonna lose? We could lose $3 million. He focused on, well, what would the other side lose if they don't make this deal? Well, they would lose the publicity, and he focused on that, and because of that, he completely flipped the situation and got the photographer to pay something instead of losing money to him. The point here is to not just focus on what are your alternatives if you fail the negotiation. Instead, focus on what their alternatives are. Focus on what they're gonna win if they make this deal with you. Make them feel like they're really close to winning. If they just move a couple inches to give you what you want, they can win. It is a much simpler way to look at these things because it's much easier to apply, and you'll find that it gives you a much better result. Batna is beginning argument, and I just totally messed up. It's not beginning argument. So I want to talk through some of the problems with this video. The other alternative might be to get a divorce or to get a divorce. I hope you're enjoying these videos and they're helping you out. If they are, hit the like button down below. Let me know if you have any questions in the comment section. And of course, subscribe to my channel because I'm coming at you with videos each and every week. I will see you in the next one.